The silence from Sacramento echoes across these hills. In Calaveras County and many others, you'll find people like Carol Castle struggling to rebuild their lives after man-made disasters. It's why they want answers from Governor Gavin Newsom.
He doesn't care. Isn't the governor supposed to be for the people of the state that he lives in?
Back in 2015, Carol escaped the Butte fire. The fire was started by one of Governor Newsom's major campaign donors, PG&E. CAL FIRE arson investigators found PG&E at fault. The company agreed to settle. And yet,
Somebody gave this to us when the refrigerator inside went out.
as recently as last year, Carol and her husband were still waiting for their PG&E money. The floor of their trailer broke years ago. They had to resort to building a tent as their shelter.
Greed. It's an ugly thing.
Carol's not alone. Many of her neighbors still live in camping conditions. So do survivors in several other counties. PG&E filed for bankruptcy after sparking 24 wildfires over 4 years. 131 people died. 70,000 survivors went after PG&E for damages for burning their homes and businesses. The hard truth is, PG&E's bankruptcy plan is leaving them short. That plan was brokered, blessed, and bolstered by Governor Gavin Newsom. We want answers for those thousands of survivors. We've asked more than a dozen times over the past 5 years to schedule an interview, but we've only ever been able to question the governor unscheduled. Hey, on wildfires, Governor, the trustee for PG&E's 70,000 victims, Governor, says that your bill left them out.
Sorry.
How do you respond?
We're done with the press conference. Thank you.
You don't have anything to say to the victims who are $2.5 billion short, according to their trustee, Governor?
It's just making it impossible sometimes to do this job.
Alexei Kosif with nonprofit news site Cal Matters recently reported on the lack of press access in Governor Newsom's administration.
You know, it is a strange position to be in as a reporter because you never want to make yourself the story. But this has been a growing issue for the press corps over the past few years.
At its most extreme, Kosif reported, staffers physically blocked journalists from approaching Governor Newsom. That happened to us here.
Well, there's a new sheriff in town in California where we brought big oil to their knees.
Governor Newsom held a bill signing event hammering on the greed of oil companies.
$75 billion of stock buybacks and dividends increases.
Dividends are behind our two questions. How is it fair for PG&E to pay profits to shareholders again when its fire victims aren't fully paid? And what will the governor do to help them?
And you guys have plenty of questions. I'm happy to answer all of them, but
The governor didn't take all questions, so we followed, hoping to ask ours, but staffers intercepted us.
So we're not taking more questions. We just did it.
As the governor ducked down the stairs, a group of staffers blocked our camera with their bodies.
The governor is not obligated to answer our questions, but to physically block reporters at an event from even trying to do their job, you know, it's beyond simply ignoring a question. Then it becomes obstruction.
I want to get you all the information that we can get you on this, but just email us and we'll be happy to provide it.
I have your word on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Been there, done that.
Steve Maviglio was press secretary to Governor Gray Davis.
He's trying to prevent an embarrassing question, and that's his job. I don't know what to prove of the way he handled that, but you know, he now has an obligation to provide that, and you should keep airing that until you get an answer.
I have your word on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
These people are going to be shorted.
Oh, I want to get you all the information you can, okay?
By email, we asked for the 12th time in 5 years to interview the governor about PG&E. Our request was denied.
Hold the guilty party, PG&E, the convicted felon, responsible for the crimes that they have committed.
Steve Bradley's grandma, Colleen, on the left, is one of PG&E's 84 manslaughter victims. She died in the 2018 Camp Fire. His mom, on the right, also lost her home. She died later, waiting for her PG&E settlement money.
They should have paid for, my mom. It would have been nice if she could have gone home in her last days.
The governor's office never agreed to sit down with us, so we showed up to another event, this one on abortion access.
Governor, PG&E on its most recent earnings call said that it was going to go back to paying a dividend later this year. Meantime, the 70,000 wildfire victims are still waiting on their payments. They're being told not to expect to be paid in full. I'm curious to know whether you think that's fair and why, but more importantly, after your administration said that the state should ensure fire victims are treated fairly and fully compensated, is there anything, what do you plan to do to try to get those victims to 100% of what they're owed?
Well, we're here talking about the pending looming fire that's in front of us, and I appreciate the question on PG&E. That's well-established territory in terms of the comments we've made and the work we did collectively, not only as administration in partnership with the legislature. I don't know about the dividends call at PG&E, and I'll have to get back to you on that.
Why is it fair that they pay their shareholders but not their victims?
I'm sorry.
He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. You see it on his face. When you bring it up, he's like, oh God, this again. And how many people in California have been affected by this? Even if not directly, indirectly, their PG&E bills going up to help PG&E pay us. And he doesn't care. He should not be in office.
Later, by email, Newsom's staff repeated the line they've sent us many times before. No governor in California history has done more to hold PG&E accountable. The statement described some of the bankruptcy process, but it didn't answer our two questions. Does he think this treatment of PG&E victims is fair, and does he plan to help them? Some fire attorneys have asked the governor for a state loan to help pay victims. That went nowhere.
PG&E created that debt. They need to pay that debt.
Steve Bradley doesn't want the state to pay. If PG&E now has enough money to pay dividends, he says, it should pay.
And no one should be making any extra money until those victims have been paid for. I know legally there is no way to hold them to that standard, but it is the right and moral thing for them to do.
He wanted to hear the governor say that, to use his bully pulpit as chief executive of the state, which governors frequently do.
He could call out PG&E. He could mention the payment to the shareholders to put public pressure or public shaming on them to kind of address it or speed it up.
Political science professor Cristina Flores-Victor says the governor's response made it clear he's not planning to use his bully pulpit for fire survivors.
It seems like we've already dealt with this, and whatever political energy has been expended on this topic is done.
Newsom has raised his national profile. He's booking interviews with national outlets, highlighting hot-button national issues. But some of the issues the California press wants to ask about, like homelessness, problems with state programs, or the bailout of PG&E,
They don't get him the good headlines. They maybe get him the bad headlines, right? You can understand the strategy, right? Say nothing and perhaps the story will go away, and sometimes it does. And you know, that's what makes it an effective strategy, and that's why people continue to do it.
For Carol and thousands like her, this story won't go away. It's her life. She finally has a real roof over her head. Friends sold her this house cheap.
I wanted to emphasize that this isn't because of PG&E. We're not home because of something they did to make up for what they did. This is because I have good friends. There's good people in the world.
Today, Carol only has 60% of her PG&E settlement. The Fire Victim Trust acknowledges victims will come up short, but it won't say by how much. Some projections show victims are only going to get about 80% of their money. Carol can't pay 80% of her PG&E bill.
Would we get away with that? They would come after us until the day we died.
If she gets less than the full amount, Carol will struggle harder to keep the roof she finally has over her head. She sums up what she wants to hear from Governor Newsom in one word: compassion.
When you're in that position, you can change the world. You can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Well, where's your humanity?
Brandon Rittiman, ABC 10 News.